Hello, everyone, and I hope you are doing great. Tonight, we continue our English language teaching webinars, and tonight, Global Bus Foundation invited very special guest speakers who have got the same goal, the same interest to share with you about their experience, about the journey of PhD. So Global Bus Foundation is a non-governmental organization that aims to help and to empower both youth and teachers. We offer programs on English language teaching, project management, coaching, and business. We have trained and coached youth and teachers not only in Morocco, but also abroad. For example, we trained youth belonging to Tunisia, France, Spain, China, the UK. Global Bus Foundation organizes very interesting programs. We organize the annual conference on English language teaching. And by the way, we invite you next summer. We organize the Rabat International Conference on English language teaching, which will take place exactly in the end of June at Mercury Hotel. Global Bus Foundation also organizes TEFL courses, and there are two types, online and face-to-face. Face-to-face 120-hour TEFL course for 6 months. And if you are interested, you can contact us. We have got the phone numbers, the email, and the website. We also organize online courses, especially via Zoom. Great. Tonight, we have brought very special guest speakers. And first of all, I would like to give the floor to our doctoral program coordinator, Dr. Yamin Al-Qirat Al-Allam. Then I'm going to ask Dr. Yassine Boussa, Dr. Suhaila Kamalishi, Dr. Saad Bulhana, and Dr. Yasmin Hsnawi and Dr. Yasmin Zarruq to introduce themselves briefly. Today or tonight, Dr. Jones Al-Bussi and I will be the moderator of tonight's webinar. Thank you. So Professor Yamina Al-Qirat Al-Allam, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Hussein. I was not supposed to say anything as I told you normally.
Just a few words, please.
Yeah, well, just to explain, thank you first for Global Bus Foundation for giving us the opportunity to give the opportunity to our doctoral program students to talk about their experiences, or as I call it personally, to talk about their doctoral journey. So the idea, if you remember how the idea of this session has come into existence is, remember, as a follow-up of the first session we had Professor Jonas Al-Busti and myself talking about the challenges and opportunities of doctoral program students. We thought that even though we have talked about the issue, we thought that the best people to talk about the issue and the ones who are in a better position really to tell about their experiences would be the people who have already gone through the experience. And the idea of choosing those who have completed already their doctoral thesis is that because they are now out of it and they have some distance with their doctoral research, they will be able to talk about the experience in a more objective way, and they will tell about the positive and negative sides of the journey, but they will surely, as I did mention it for them in the guiding questions, we want to hear about the takeaways from this research journey. And we would like them to insist on some of the recommendations they will make to doctoral program students who are still in the process and give them some advice. So that's all I can say about it. So thanks, Mr. Hussein, for this opportunity a second time. And just to put it here today because we should let people know about it. There will be a third session to this series of webinars. There will be a next session, and this time it will concern mostly doctoral students who are still in the process of completing their dissertation. And from within this time, we will hear again about the challenges and opportunities undertaking a doctoral research gives to young researchers. And with this, I thank you very much for the opportunity you are giving us. And we would like to thank Global Bus Foundation for all the efforts you are making really for enlightening, actually. You are enlightening young researchers. You are helping with training people in teaching English. So that's really a great initiative, and you are really doing a great job. And thank you very much. So I can see all the presenters here now. Welcome to all of you, and good luck with the session. Thank you.
I think I'll probably have to come in because I'm thinking our moderator, we lost him.
We lost him? Oh.
Yeah, I don't think he's in. But anyway, so we'll probably get started. I want to just first of all say that I'm really thrilled to be together, and I want to thank the Global Bus Foundation to actually ask me if I would like to come and moderate. So I'm very honored to be with all colleagues here. But I want to probably just start saying a few things, and then we'll probably get into this. So what I want this session to be, and I will probably follow the norm that I would do before I ask people to briefly introduce themselves. I want to also thank Professor Kirat for this, like her unparalleled efforts to get all of us together here and to talk about the journeys that all of you taken throughout all this process, but also to echo sentiment that I absolutely agree with is, if there is anyone that you want to ask people that go through the experience to actually share their points of view, and also to talk about the sort of the journey, the plus and the minuses, because I know a lot of people probably are here with us. They wanted to see sort of the kind of strategies that you've developed throughout this journey and what kind of recommendation you would offer them. So without further ado, I'd like to start by asking the panelists, and I'll give them something specific, really. I mean, what would be really interesting, there are a couple of things I would like to ask. One is, it would be great to introduce yourself and probably tell us a little bit about your discipline, because it's so important for people to know what discipline you're coming from, or sort of the studies you've done, because it would really make, if we go into talking about sort of research and research methodologies or any of those questions that might come, it would also pertain into your sort of discipline, like sort of social studies or humanities, or so why don't we get started? And I'm probably want to ask, if you don't mind, Yasmin, to introduce yourself. Then and we have two Yasmins here, but I'll probably start with Yasmin Zarqawi. If you could, Zeroki, if you can introduce yourself, and we'll probably just follow up to have what I really plan is to have a rich conversation here. So why don't you please take the floor and introduce yourself, and thank you all for being here.
Yeah, so hello everyone, I'm pleased to be with you tonight. So I'm Yasmin Zarqawi. I've earned my PhD in Cultural Studies just 2 months ago from Sidi Mohammed bin Abdullah University, and I work as a teacher of English at a high school in Salih, and also part-timer at the faculty of part-timer teacher of English at the Faculty of Science in Rabat, Mohammed V. So yeah, so I'm happy to share my experience that I'll be talking about later for sure. So
thank you so much. That's fabulous. I'll move to the second Yasmin. For a minute, I was like, okay, I might have to use last names, but that will work. Go ahead, please.
That's okay. Hi, Dr. Jonas. Hi, Dr. Yamin Al-Qirat. First of all, I would like to thank you all for this great initiative. It's always great to see you know, it just like it gives me goosebumps to see, you know, just these doctoral students, and it just took me back 2 years, you know, when I did my PhD. And I see the smile of Yunus here. I know what you're smiling about. Okay, so I'll briefly introduce myself. Yasmin Hasnawi. I hold a PhD in from the university, Mohammed V University, which I'm proud of. I did a very complex subject that I will be happy to share with you my experience and my life journey. I'm currently a director of admissions and public relations at the American School in Casablanca, and I'm also founding member of a very important think tank, the Institute of Saharan Studies Al-Andalus, that, you know, it regroups researchers, university professors from mostly Latin America and North America. So, and I look forward to hearing about your all experience and share, you know, the challenges and opportunities of our PhD journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. That was fabulous. And I'll probably move now to Suhaila, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Jonas. Thank you, Global Bus Foundation. Thank you, dear Professor Doctoral Qirat, for granting me this opportunity to share my experience with you all today here. So my name is Suhaila Hamnishi. I am currently an assistant university professor at Sidi Mohammed bin Abdullah University. Actually, I got recruited 3 months after I defended my doctoral thesis, and I worked on language use and choice in Morocco at the era of globalization. During my doctoral journey, I worked as a part-timer at University at Mohammed V University. I also had the opportunity to teach Arabic to foreigners at Middlebury Summer School in August 2016. I had another experience with them here at Mohammed V University with the Middlebury Study Abroad program. I think that's enough.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's great. And if you don't mind, Yassine, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Sure. I don't know if you can you hear me well? Yep.
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Perfect. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And I just want to make one rectification, if I could. In the poster, it's Busa. It should be Busagi. So it's like some few words missed in the name, but it's absolutely all right. So I graduated almost a year now with a doctorate degree in sociolinguistics. I worked on language policy in Morocco, especially the case of the teaching of the Amazigh language in Morocco. I'm currently the academic coordinator at the American Language Center in Mohammedia. And I have worked as teacher of English at the University Internationale of Casablanca and ESSEC Business School. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much.
Looking forward to sharing my journey and experience with you all.
Thank you so much for being with us here. And I'll probably move to Saad, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. First of all, thank you very much for this beautiful gathering. I mean, we rarely, get together for these virtuous purposes. It's really rare. So let me introduce myself. My name is Saad Boulahnan. I defended my doctorate back in 2019. You could say that you could place my specialty or my doctorate between sociology and cultural studies. I worked on Islamophobia in American mainstream news media. So the field work was done in the United States, and pretty much all the work was done in Morocco. And I would be more than happy to share with you my experience and my recommendations for future doctorate holders, inshallah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Yunus, do you mind introducing yourself, please?
Thank you very much. Professor Karat, thank you for bringing us back together after months of rapture, given both the pandemic, but also how just life takes people apart, I guess. My name is Yunus Tim, and I'm honored to be part of this distinguished panel. I graduated 18 months ago with a PhD in entrepreneurship education in Morocco's higher education institutions. So, what discipline that is, I couldn't tell you, to be honest, because it's highly multidisciplinary, as it combines education, economics, pedagogy, and other subdisciplines. And I come to this discipline from also a multitude of other disciplines, as I've done my my BA in international relations and my master's in international development, both of which were conducted in the US. So I came back with that idea that being disciplinary only in one thing was simply not personally my thing. So I opted for something that would be multidisciplinary, and I had the distinct pleasure to work with Professor Qarat, who I've known now for 20 years, before I had a beard, or before I lost the hair, or before I gained the weight. So I guess, you know, she's been there through thick and thin, and I wanted to thank her for that. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for this wonderful introductions. And I really, what I want this to be served, and I want to also welcome my co-moderators to ask questions as well. But and we'll probably think of a number of things that we can discuss. But there's one thing I want to probably start with, and that would be specifically, and feel free, we can have this where people can probably enrich this conversation. I want each one of you to think of a couple of major challenges that you faced. And I really try to start with the challenges rather than start in a very sort of positive notes that we'll go to. But if you think about a couple of challenges or major challenges, roadblocks, obstacles, what you would call it, throughout your journey that you would want to share with either PhD candidates or other people who are actually thinking of, embarking on this journey, what would they be? But not only like think about challenges, but what are some of the strategies that you've personally developed that actually helped you overcome those strategies? So I mean, some of you might take a little time to gather ideas, but I really want you to like specifically give us like examples and give us ways and strategies you went that a lot of people that are listening to this wonderful conversation could probably utilize those strategies to overcome their obstacles. So the floor is open. I want to make this style where people come in and we can listen to each one and come back rather than calling the people, if that's possible for all of you. But please, the floor is open, and I would like to for one of you to get started.
Given that I've spoken last in the first batch, I'll take a stab at this one now. It's very difficult for me to sugar the pill on this one, because there aren't just a couple of challenges. There's going to be a lot of challenges.
Absolutely.
Throughout the different years of your PhD dissertation. For me, very specifically and anecdotally as well, I enrolled in the PhD program the same year I got the job I was waiting for a long time, and the same exact month where I got married. So I should say that the PhD took the backseat for a long while. It wasn't on the radar, it wasn't a priority, and that caught up with me later, because it will catch up to you if you decide to continue and finish and get to the finish line. You're going to have to pay for those sins you committed in the first couple of years of your dissertation. And don't put it in so many, I guess, graphic words, because I'm really hoping that people who are still on the journey, I really hope they understand the gravity of not having discipline. I suffered from that for the first few years, and I had to catch up in the latter years, and that determined my lifestyle for the last 3 years, really, of my dissertation. So that would be the first challenge for me. The second challenge was ensuring a balance between a full-time PhD program and a full-time family and a full-time job especially for me, my job required extensive travel, unannounced travel. So I couldn't really, and Professor Karat could attest to this, the many times we agreed to meet and the meeting just never materialized because I was either up in the air or traveling locally. That's a challenge when you have that sort of a job or when you have a demanding family too. Luckily for me, my family was extremely supportive, both my parents, my siblings, but also my wife and kid at the time. I was very supportive of that process. And so the strategy to overcome the first challenge is discipline. You have to make your PhD your priority. It's not just a box ticking exercise that you'll do when you have time. It just doesn't cut it that way. The strategy to make sure that you have a balanced life and that you give enough time to your PhD, but to your job, but also to your family is also discipline and consistency. You'll get tired after a while, you'll get sick of it. And it happened even at the very last stage of the PhD. I just couldn't read it anymore. When I finished it, I just had to print it and take it to the university. So the two major pieces of advice, practical strategies, are consistency and discipline. Thank you.
Excellent. That's actually very fabulous and succinctly said. I'll probably move to Yasmin Hasnawi. And I'd like to sort of build on what Yunus actually mentioned. And if they are, and I'd like people to think, if it's sort of possible, to think all different challenges that may be so different and thinking of strategies, because I'm thinking of, we're going to build a lot of strategies for a lot of people that some of us might even learn. I mean, we're talking about strategy, not just PhD, but any sort of scholarly work. So Yasmin, you have the floor. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I agree with you, what Yunus just said, because we have known each other for so many years and we've been very active, both like professionally and doing a lot of community services. And at the same time, we wanted to achieve our academic career, which is achieve our PhD. So it was not really easy. So I think that I agree with what Yunus said. I think that discipline is one of the most important things that a student needs to adopt in his life. The second thing, not to dig into what Yunus said, but rather join what he says, I think one of the most challenging things I encountered in my PhD, first of all, just to tell you the exact subject I worked on. I worked on a very complex, sensitive subject here in Morocco, which is the Sahara conflict. But I really went into I would say the right point, which is like Algeria foreign policy in the Sahara conflict. So it was not easy. It's not an easy task. But first of all, I believe that it was mainly data collection. Data collection is important. The way you collect data is very important. The subject I dealt with was not like I used to go to. I went to all the universities in Rabat, Marrakesh. I searched for PhDs. I did not find any PhD that speaks only on that very particular subject on Algeria's foreign policy in the Sahara conflict. So I had to come up with everything from scratch. Like I started on digging, on trying to, I think it's also important to build a network. If you don't build a network in your field, in your PhD field, I don't think you will have a consistent material. So it's very important. You have to be online to try to build up your network. It's a 5 years PhD. It can be 6 years of PhD. So the first 2 years are very crucial in collecting data and building your network. When I say network, it shouldn't be to look on the internet and look for material. I think you have to be a go-getter, meet with people. You cannot do a PhD without meeting people in the field. Now, with the pandemic, we learned how to use Zoom. We learned how to use a lot of technology. So I think you have to reach out to people and take the risk. I myself was faced sometimes with even people who could not talk to me because of the sensitivity of the subject. So I did a very interesting thing. I had my job. I took a loan. So I took a loan from the bank. And then I decided to travel all over the world. I said, I'm going to do it. Go getter. I did my visas. And that helped me a lot to build my network. And I had also the facility to be accepted by people. sometimes, you know, students tend to read a lot of books, but they don't tend to go to the others, to the others who are experts in the field. So data collection is very important, but the way you do it, you have to do it in a smart way. Building network is important. So and also discipline. You know, you cannot sometimes balance between your work and your PhD. I had a very you know, in my professional life, I used to work for a very big organization. I had to quit in order to finish my PhD, to switch from, you know, that stressful job to an accommodated job, which is my current job, in order to finish my PhD. Otherwise, I would have never, you know, finished it. Unfortunately, I wish that I could finish it like in 5 years, but I finished it in like six years and a half. So I think that discipline is very important, data collection, and you have to, you know, go get it. One of the challenges also in Morocco, and it's something that I've said, like there is not enough, I would say, opportunities for students to get funds. The lack of funds makes the students only stick to reading, only stick to the internet, only. So I think that it's something, maybe if Mrs. Dr. Qairat can take note of it and plead for it. I think that's very important because, I mean, for me, like taking a loan, I mean, you have to do it. You really have to think about it to do it. So yeah, so this is what I have to share. I think that data collection, building the network is one of the among the most important things for a PhD student to do in order to be successful and to give. Because in my PhD, there were even sometimes some information that are not even in the book. They were written in the textbooks. I met with, you know, diplomats who used to tell me, oh, you know, at certain times we didn't have the right to write information because we were afraid of the leaks. But listen to this. So they gave me information that are not even written in the books, and I reported that. How I got that? It was through the, you know, the connections I established. So yeah. So this is what I have.
These are great strategies, by the way, and I might have to come back and ask you a lot of questions about your field work, because what you've done is specifically unique than others, and also like sort of amazing work, and I'll come back to that. But also what you've also probably touched on is also the financial aspect and the financial burden as well, which is really more important, because we can think about consistency, we can think about networking, which is really important. Past the network, not research, but being part of listserv and know scholars working in the field and building that, but also coming back to the financial burden, which is a lot for a lot of people. So that's something we'll probably go back to. But I want to just say one thing before I give the floor to Suhaila, because I want to hear from each panelist to build this. And Hussein will probably run this a bit, is people can ask a lot of questions because you're now listening to a lot of strategies and you may have certain questions you want to ask. And we want to go and survey questions later after we hear from everybody. So please, if you have any questions, write it down. Hussein will probably ask those questions for the panelists, so we could also see how people are following the conversation and they might have something that need to be addressed. So on that note, I'm just probably, Hussein, let's wait till we listen to each panelist about their two major challenges and strategies, and I'll come back to you, and you probably want to ask certain questions from your followers. So Suhaila, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. So what I wanted to say is that unlike Dr. Yunus and Dr. Yasmin, I enjoyed the luxury of prioritizing my doctoral research. So the only responsibility I had was me, myself, and my doctoral thesis was part of that. So I consider myself to be lucky. But even though I had no other responsibilities, I faced some major problems, and I will mention three main challenges that were that I learned from a lot. So the first one was related to the literature review. So as I worked on the status of foreign languages in Rabat at the level of the master's program, and I continued at the level of the doctoral studies, you're working on language use and choice. And I had an idea about what to include in the lit review, But what I planned was to include maybe one chapter in the lecture review in which I discuss the status of these languages, and then, or the languages in use in Morocco, and then the interaction of these languages, and then the attitudes towards languages, and then language policy. But while I was doing the reading, and I had to broaden the scope of my readings, of course, the doctoral thesis is not like the master's thesis, of course, as you know, or you probably know, at this level, you have to be eclectic in reading, you have to broaden the scope. So I came across new concepts, new views, new arguments that were somehow related to my topic and that needed really to be included in my thesis. So I ended up like writing 3 chapters in which I discussed these concepts as well as reviewing the literature. And this took almost 3 times what of the time I planned at first for the lit review. And it felt really frustrating, especially when you compare yourself to maybe your colleagues or people who are enrolled in the doctoral program with you, and you see that people are progressing with their chapters. Maybe some of them were at the methodology chapters, others were progressing even more and more, and I felt a sort of left behind, even though there is no racing about it. So this is one of the challenges I faced. Another challenge is related to the data collection. So in my thesis, we tried to include some representative areas of different parts of Morocco, and we agreed to work on the rural as well as urban areas. And this challenge was really a nightmare. Here in Morocco, unfortunately, we don't have the culture of helping with research, the habit of hearing about research, about the research instruments. So people were not really willing to help, and some of them were abstaining from helping either with the questionnaire or sitting for a face-to-face interview, or maybe even joining a focus group. By the way, I included the 3 instruments, so you could imagine the amount of challenges I faced during the data collection. So some people would say that sorry, I'm busy for the moment, maybe later. Some would say, I will do it later, but they never do it. And some would frankly say that I have no interest in helping you. So they don't care about research. So this was the second challenge. The third challenge was with the SPSS. So I collected 2,072 copies of the questionnaire, and I had to enter them myself. So I had 2,072 entry, and my questionnaire was 4 pages long. It comprised a sum of 31 questions, and almost half of them were multiple choice questions. So you can do the math of how much time it took for me. So this was a mechanical process whose results do not really show in reality. At the end of the day, you have nothing. At least at the level of the lit review, I had 3 chapters to brag about. Oh, I wrote 3 chapters. But at this stage, I was like, what am I doing? This is really a waste of time. But that was the data. And I spent a lot of time collecting it. So I couldn't trust anybody with it. So I had to do it myself again. It sort of drained my time, but there is no way, there is nothing to do about it. So these are the things sometimes when you are doing the doctoral thesis and you try to evaluate the pace, you try to evaluate the results. Sometimes you need something tangible to feel that you are progressing. And there are certain stages in the thesis which do not translate into chapters, for example, or into something tangible. But these are stages that a researcher should be aware of and should be aware that this is normal. It takes time, and okay, yes, it's not about, maybe it's not about, yeah, you have to compare yourself to the others, otherwise you fear from being left behind, or being lazy more than enough. Sometimes we feel lazy, or we act in a lazy way during the doctoral process. This happens to many doctoral students, or happened to many doctoral candidates I knew, or that were in doing their doctoral studies with me. So these were the main challenges that I faced during my doctoral thesis. There is one last challenge, was when I entered the data and I ran the test and I got the results. And another challenge was, or another main challenge was, how to present this data. What is the best way to present this data? And at first I thought maybe I will have an idea from the literature, and maybe I'll do it the same way they did it. And this sounded a little bit straightforward in terms of comparing and contrasting, but the results were like boring chapters, mechanical chapters, and they didn't show the added value of the work. I was very enthusiastic to present everything I got in the data, but researchers should be really aware that they should be selective in their data presentation, and they should look for trends in the data to present, instead of when we do a lot of effort, we want to show that, yeah, we've done a lot of effort, but sometimes when you present everything, you have a right to, you spoil it. Okay,
that was great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all the strategies. And we'll come back to these. We'll come back to time management. We'll go to structure. There are a lot of things that you've actually covered in your remarks. But I want to move to Yasmin, and maybe then we'll move probably to Yassine and Saad, just to hear, once again, briefly, certain challenges, strategies. One thing I would ask, if it's possible, if there are some challenges we've heard about before, to probably just briefly touch on them, so we can move to some other questions. So go ahead, Yasmin, please.
Yeah, so I totally agree with everything has been said concerning all the challenges. And I think that another challenge has to do with the time management. Because most of us, I think, we spend a lot of time like collecting data and reading materials. And I believe this is a huge mistake, because at the end, at some points, you realize that that you can never feel that you are satisfied or you are done with that process of reading. So I believe it turns out to be confusing and time consuming. So it's very important to read and write at the same time. So that it's, I think this is a better strategy. And what else? Something was mentioned I wanted to comment on, I forgot.
Or we'll come back to you. We'll come back to you.
Yeah, so this is it.
Yassine, go ahead, please. You have the floor.
Yeah, I'm not going to be repeating a lot of what have been said, but I'm just, it's very much the same things. I mean, like I had a very similar situation as Yunus, getting married and having a baby. It kind of like changed the whole process because it slowed it down, and Professor Qiraat can attest to that. But one thing that I think is a challenge and maybe a strategy is this. Something for people to take away is, like, I think people need to know what you can handle and when you need to ask for help. So one of the major challenges that I had actually was when I've done everything and I started like analyzing my data, and I don't know, was it because of pride? Was it because of just like, I thought that I could do it? I didn't ask for help from my supervisor to actually walk me through how to analyze. I didn't. This is the first time I do. I'm actually in the process of writing a PhD, and so I didn't ask for help. And when I presented everything, it was not really great. So I had to go over again and redo it from scratch, the presentation and the interpretation. So one thing is like PhD candidate, if there is something that you can handle, go for it. But if there are times when you feel like you need to ask for help, just do it. Your supervisor is there, your colleagues are there, because sometimes when help is needed, you should ask for it. The other thing is very much the same thing as with Suhaila when she talked about collecting data. I think sometimes we have to be very realistic in terms of what we can actually handle and what we can do. It was very much the same thing when I started, because I worked on language policy and the teaching of Amazigh in Morocco. So I had to survey so many different regions around Morocco. But I was very, very, I thought that I could do more than what realistically could be done. And in the end, I had to go back again to the basics and see what could be handled appropriately and done well. So be realistic in terms of what you can actually do and ask for help whenever is needed. So that's pretty much what I can say for the time being.
And I love those. They're actually really, really pertinent. The fact that it's not a solo journey and you have to talk to others and you have to ask for help and assistance, but at the same time, sort of set realistic goals throughout the journey. They're fabulous. Saad, you have the last word, please.
All right, thank you. I don't think I will delve into the technical issues, and that's because I think that these issues pertain to the topic you have chosen. And if you have chosen a topic, you just might as well cope with these issues. I mean, data collection or something like that. I mean, there are issues that precede these technicalities. For example, choosing a supervisor, or even hammering at the question as to whether we have a supervisor in Morocco or not. And even pointing out to the idea or to the fuzzy area where a supervisor is supposed, as to what a supervisor is supposed to do and what they don't have to do. Because at the end of the day, you realize that you're thrown under the bus and you're on your own. The supervisor only forces certain topics that they're interested in, and they're trying to distract you away from what you're doing. I know that my words sound a little aggressive, but this is reality. And a lot of students—
This is what we're here for. It's like a forum.
Yeah,
have a conversation.
Right. And this is what doctoral
challenges.
Right. This is what doctoral students are suffering from. Only they can't point out to this because it's a taboo, or they feel ashamed of bringing up this issue. But this is the thing.
I hope your supervisor is not listening in.
No, I don't really. I could care less whether she's listening or not, because I had to go through this for 5 years, and whenever I asked for help, I found, I realized that I was on my own. What else?
Saad, can I ask ask you probably briefly? So sure. I think what you're saying, if sort of sum up, and we can move and we can listen to a second one, you're technically saying selection of supervisors is important, and True. The work, and also sort of the help and assistance that you get throughout the whole process. That's point in your point. But what would be second challenge? And we can go back to these as well. And one of the things probably would be that I think a lot of people are interested in, and I absolutely agree. We talk about a lot of things, but a lot of people are interested in strategies, but also strategies that are practical. Just coming back to what Eunice mentioned earlier, even which to me super important. You have to ask for help when help is needed, and not just to think you're the only person in this journey. But go ahead, Saad. You have another
right.
challenge or
another issue. Another challenge would be libraries, because at times you realize that you're in need of an interesting article, and you can't access the article just because the university does not have access to, let's say, JSTOR or any other platform. And this is something that shouldn't be the case. I mean, universities as big as Hassan II, Muhammad V, and some doctors here from other big universities. I mean, they can afford to have access, to have accounts that their students or their doctoral students can benefit from. Only we don't have this luxury. I mean, if we can call it a luxury. That's one thing. Another thing would be administration. I mean, they're not facilitating the work, or they're not making students' work, student interaction, students' endeavors, smooth. I don't want to delve into this because, again, it's very negative. Other than that, everything that I would like to say has been already said by my fellow doctors.
So I probably have a couple of things, and I'm gonna ask my co-moderator if he could probably show up to see what questions we have on Facebook. But I want to say one thing. I just wanted to build up on what Saad mentioned earlier. When we're talking about challenges, we're talking about personal challenges, but we're also talking about external challenges. And I say this genuinely in terms of, yes, the library is a huge problem, administration, a huge problem. We can look at that. We can ask all these different questions as well. But I also want us to think, these are like really important things for people listening about how they can go and navigate all of this. So I'm gonna ask a question, but I want Hussein to probably come and fill some sort of questions from Facebook. But before you do that, I wanna probably pose a question, and I want everybody to think about it, and we'll come back to it. I want you to think if there was one thing that you wish you knew before you started your PhD. Think about it for a minute. I don't really put it on a spot for you to give me a response now, but you're thinking of this journey that took some of you 5 years, some of you more. In the American system, it can take up to 8 years. And it's something that you really do for a long amount of time. If there was one thing you wish you knew before you started, what would it be? So I don't want a response right now because you also have to think about it. Is that a question that we ask on the spot? So I want to go to Hussein and ask him if he could field certain question. And I think it'd be probably good if you take 2 or 3 at once, and you could address them to some of the panelists so we can move with the questions. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Jonas. Yes, by the way, I would like to say congratulations again. Tonight's webinar has broken the record. A lot of people, by the way, are following us. We have started back to 3 months, but tonight we broke the record. More people are following us. That's amazing. And of course, the topic and the guest speakers are amazing as well. Good. So there are a couple of questions. For the first one is Ohuya Yusuf said, thank you all for such a brilliant webinar and bringing all these creative people together. My question is, how can one strike a balance between work, family, and PhD? It's the first question.
I guess answer is you can.
Yunus and probably Yassine, because they've mentioned that. But what are some of the strategies you've done? But I'm thinking about more practical strategies, and I'll come to Saad as well, that you've done to strike this balance. Easily said, but it's really hard to do. But go ahead, please.
Well, the short answer is you can't strike that balance. And I think once you come to peace with that conclusion, I think your life becomes a bit relatively easier. That doesn't mean you can't have strategies to cope, because I had a budget for flowers that I bought my wife's because she took care of the kids in the evenings when I was trying to do my PhD, and worked while I was working during the day. So to be quite honest and just down to earth, you're going to have to compromise, not compromise your personal life, but you compromise on your ego and just be a good listener to what people are telling you about how much you're screwing up the balance with your personal life, with your family commitments, with your professional life, and with your PhD. And at some point, you're just going to have to get used to being, to having des reproches, complaints and blames at work, at home, and with your supervisor. I think it's just part of the nature of the beast. You have to cope with it. Professor Karat is smiling because she has horror stories of what some of us may have gone through during this journey. By the way, personally, it took me almost 8 years. And I'm blessed and thankful that I had a very understanding wife, and extremely understanding and helpful supervisor, and not so flexible of a job, but there was ways that we could always find a way to prioritize. So the PhD, the journey for me in terms of balancing things out is not a linear sort of thing that you look at and you have to balance all of them all the time. It's ups and downs, and the ups means that sometimes you prioritize your PhD and therefore you let go of some of your personal and professional responsibilities, and then at a certain period the PhD becomes sort of secondhand or goes back to the back seat, and then you prioritize your personal life. There isn't really one or a menu of specific strategies, but you're just going to have to play it with the context. Personally, that's what I did. It worked for me, even though now my wife sometimes still says, I took care of the kids for 8 years when you were trying to get a PhD. That's something I'm going to have to live with, unfortunately, but that's just part of the deal.
Thank you so much. And I'll come to Saad, and then probably Yassine, and we may take other questions. Saad, we can't hear you.
Saad, activate your mic, please.
I think I'll probably.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, regarding your question as to whether we can have a full-time job, like Dr. Yassine talked about earlier, have a full-time job, have a family. I wouldn't know anything about this because the decision I made, prior to embarking on this journey, was sort of wise. And because I didn't have a job, I didn't get into any relationship, that would waste my time, time that is worth spent in my PhD. I mean, I'm being honest. So yes, I didn't have.
I love your honesty. That's what we want. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I didn't have a job, and I did that on purpose because I knew that working, having a full-time job would, exhaust me, and at the end of the day, I would be exhausted. The only thing that I wanted to exhaust me was my PhD, was my work. So I had to work 5 or 6 hours a day, and then wind up working 2 hours of quality time. You watch videos of Ronaldo, videos of this and that, and then you waste time here and there, and then you end up with some quality time. If you end up with 1 hour and a half on a daily basis, that's already good. So as to the question, can we have a full-time job? No, I think it would conflict with our time that is best devoted to our research.
All right,
yeah.
I'll go to Yassine, and then and Yasmin want to have the floor as well. Yassine, go ahead, then I'll come to Yasmin.
I second what Yunus said, but I still think somehow, one way or another, like you have to find a way to go about it. I mean, it was really difficult. I mean, this was one of the challenges that I wanted to talk about, but since Yunus talked about it earlier, but what I did, at least at some point, was I challenged myself, at least because when I got to the point where I had to write, so I said, like, there is a number of papers or pages, or for example, that I need to write a day, and when I get to that, I feel like, okay, that's fine, so I can actually give some time for my family and my work. And I was lucky enough to have a flexible job. Yes, it was a full-time job, but still I was not really occupied that much with my job, because I had an office job. I was like working as a coordinator, teaching a few hours from here and there. So I kind of like had some time, but still it's a bit of a difficult thing to do. But the idea is, like set like again realistic goals. I mean, like if you can plan your days ahead or your months ahead as to what you can do this month and what you can do that month, then somewhere in the middle you can find a way to go about it.
Absolutely. I want to just echo your sentiment is the fact, set goals, but also have a timeline. And I love the fact how you're thinking about it. You're thinking about a reward system. If I manage to write 12 pages, I'll take an hour off or two or something like that. That was fabulous. Yes, me, please.
Very quickly, I mean, from my experience as somebody who was very involved in many, activities, be they with associations, community service, I had a stressful job. So the only thing sometimes is you have to make concessions. What is not necessary, just leave it apart. That was the first advice that was given by Dr. Yamin Al-Qirat when she first met us the first day. If you are interested in political science, social studies, etc., read only about political science, social studies. Just for the 5 year, concentrate on that. She also told us to go and see and meet with people, ask them, those people who did their PhDs, to give us some tips. So I just kept asking people around, what is the best thing? So I got one of the best pieces of advice from someone, a university professor. He says, just concentrate if you write 2 pages a day. So I told him, what do you do? What time do you wake up? What time do you go to bed? He said, I wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning. I write my one page. I go to bed at 10. I write another, page before 10 o'clock. So I think that helped me a lot. And from now, I even wake up at 5 and I go to bed at like 10 and 11. So I just took that, that habit. So first of all, concession. Second, ask people around, ask people who did their PhDs. They might give you the best tips ever. And third, focus only on your specialty for the 5 or 6 years of your PhD research.
That was beautiful. And that's one of the reasons why Professor Qirat got all the people here, because a lot of followers as well, Yasmin, they want to get the same advice you got from other PhD like fellows and cohort and all that, which is fabulous. A segue. My co-moderator is not here because he's the one that's looking at Facebook, following all that. But I want to come back to the question I asked earlier, and a really question that I think about as well, and I probably want to start maybe with Yasmin Zarouki and come other. But the question really was, and I'll just put it back again, what was one thing that you wish you knew before you started the journey? It's really important to think about it before you embark on it. And I want to share that. And I hope every one of you have something, or you thought of something before this. So I'm probably coming to Yasmin. And it could be what Saad mentioned earlier as well, like certain issues, how you navigate it. Maybe even like, and I'm coming back to Saad saying, hey, there are issues, but also think you thought of. Maybe for him was like, wait, I shouldn't probably, but without giving some responses, let me open the floor. Yasmin, go ahead, and we'll listen from others as well. Yasmin, I think you're still mute.
Yes. So I'm audible?
Yes,
yeah.
I can hear.
All right. So this is actually a difficult question. It's like, I wished I knew that this is a real struggle and that I have to be mentally ready for it. And that it's a huge sacrifice that you need to make at the expense of your personal life and a lot of things. It's like you should really be ready for it. So that's what comes to my mind right now. It's like,
Thank you. Yassine, if you don't mind, what would be one thing that you wish you knew prior to starting your?
One thing that I started doing at the end of my journey, my PhD journey, and I still do now, and I wish I had known about it, is reflective writing. So it's something that I started doing at the end. I mean, like I mean, like now that I look back at how I progressed from the earlier stages to the latter stages, I find it sometimes difficult to pinpoint some of the challenges that I've been through. And had I had like a journal where I wrote how I felt about the obstacles, how I felt about the progress, how I felt about what I should have done, it would have been much, much easier. So I feel like the one thing is reflective journal, like, because it puts you in a position where you understand like where you are and how you feel about the situation. And it makes you in a position where you're not just reflecting on what you've done, but you're recording your experience. And when you're recording your experience, you can access that experience, because we often think that like as we go on, we rely on memory, and very often our memory fails us a lot. So if you have that experience recorded, you can go back to it every now and then, and you can learn from it, and it paves the way to new endeavors. And how, like, if you have like a set of challenges that come your way, you know how to go about them, how to handle them, because you have a record of how you dealt with similar problems. The other thing is, when you put down like your how you feel about whatever problem it is or whatever the situation, it kind of develops your critical thinking and a questioning, and you have some sort of a questioning attitude to how you do things right that moment. I mean, like, you don't need to wait like a month or 2 months or a year or 3 years to reflect on the situation. You can actually do it like a day after, in the evening, or the next day. And that gives you, it facilitates learning from that experience, because you have it there, it's tangible, you can go back to it. And oftentimes what I do is I do it in an easy way. I mean, like, I just write the first things with a personal eye. I reflect, I focus on the concern, the issue, and I start analyze what is happening. What are some of the assumptions am I making about the situation? And then the next stage is the action. I focus on what action should I take in order to solve the problem. So had I known that from the beginning of my journey, the earlier days of my journey, I think it would have been a different experience.
That was beautiful. And that really goes to talk about you also as a researcher. And I might come later to Yasmin Hasnawi, because when I think about what you're actually talking about, Yassine as well, thinking of the work even of social scientists, and I'm thinking about anthropologists, that you journal and you have a diary with you all the time. And you actually write a lot of things in the margin, and it stays with you. And if you do like participant observation or any of that sort of things, you always have it written, and you make sure that you actually type your notes the same day. And I'll talk to Yasmin a little bit, because you would even go, and before you go to bed, you took all of the notes and you typed the notes. But it was beautiful, like in terms of thinking about reflecting on the process and thinking about the process. And it's a process that you do like pretty much, I would even say, in a personal day, and you come back, how do I go solve that? That's a beautiful strategy. Let me move, and I will probably come to Suhaila. And I'll come to Yasmin. Yasmin, I'll come to you, because Yasmin, one of the things I want you to think about really, just sort of have this conversation to build on what Yasmin mentioned earlier, and have you think about this like sort of journaling. And I'm pretty sure things you've done in your field work and your notes is what's important, but I'll come to you. Suhaila.
Yeah, thank you. I wish I knew that I was supposed to be prepared to fail many times. Okay, I think if I knew that, it would have spared me a lot of moments of stress, sometimes disappointments. So the road to the success, to the day of the defense, is full of failures. So I wish I knew that before.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Let me take Saad and Yunus, and I'll come to Yasmin at the end to sort of wrap up and talk about like sort of the experience, if you don't mind, Yasmin. And thank you for your patience, but I promise I'll get back to you. So yeah, Yunus, what would be one thing you wish you knew prior to the start? And I'll go to Saad, and I'll go to Yasmin, and then we'll go back to see what the people have, questions that they have. Go ahead.
You know, if I wish I had known I should stick to one topic. In all honesty, because the first topic I chose I think I spent a year and a half hashing it out, really, trying to unpack its different components. And then I decided it wasn't right. I decided it wasn't good enough. I decided it wasn't specific enough. And just for information, it was what comes first, sustainable development or democracy? That was the topic initially. And it's almost as if you're asking what came first, the egg or the chicken. And that was the analogy that Professor Karat gave me, that, you're going to grow old and you want to answer the question. So, and then I turned into something that I thought was very critical for the economic fabric and sustainable development of Morocco, which is jobs, job creation and wealth distribution. And what a better way to do it than to examine the very idea of entrepreneurship as a viable career path for the youth, the women, people with disabilities, and rural populations. So that was the rationale behind changing the topic, but I sort of wasted a year and a half before I switched to that. And Yassine, congratulations if you have the time to journal things out. that was great, but I guess it's not a luxury that everyone could afford. At least I couldn't. So in a
Thank you
nutshell,
so much
that
for
would be
that.
it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's beautiful advice. Saad, then Yasmin.
Yes. I wish I'd known that small details add up to form big and momentous changes. For example, let me operationalize this. I wish I had known that by reading every day on a daily basis, writing every day, then I would have finished in 3 years or less. But I didn't know this. And the problem that I had, the struggle that I had and challenge was procrastination. And this is something that everyone suffers from. You procrastinate because you have a wedding ceremony you need to attend. You have this, you have that, you have your friends you need to gather together with. You need to see your friends, etc. So this is something that many people, struggle with and suffer from. There's something else I didn't know. I thought that at the beginning, right off the bat, I was supposed to come up with a title and a limited topic, but this is not the case. I mean, sometimes you start off, researching dinosaurs and their perception of religion, and then in the elapse of 2 years, guess what? You replace dinosaurs with Americans, and here you have a good topic. But we had so much pressure, thinking that right then we needed a topic and a title. I remember my supervisor saying, "What's your title of your thesis?" In the first year. I mean, are you nuts? This is not possible. You can only come up with a title when you're almost done. I mean, you can know the concepts, the what do you call them? The variables, but not the title. And if not the title, then not the specific topic. So yeah, these two things I wish I had known.
Thank you so much, Saad. And I'll come to
thank you.
Yasmin, sort of conclude this sort of a section before I come to Hussein to probably field some more questions. Yasmin, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
So one of the things I wish I knew before my PhD is publishing, because these are one of the things that we struggled at. I mean, most of the PhD doctoral students, they struggle because first of all, we don't know how to publish in a scientific journal. It should be indexed. Well, thankfully at the university, Professor Karat sent us the guidelines, and she kept just all the time sending us reminders of how to publish. But since, it was not really easy to find, first of all, the journal. You had to look, you had to beg, you had to ask everyone, and then the way to publish. So I really wish if I knew, I would have published early on, like in the scientific journal. So it's very important for the doctoral student. One of the pieces of advice that I give to doctoral students: publish the first year, start working on publications the first year. Don't leave it until the third or fourth year, because 2 publications, yes, 2 are, it's a minimal number, but it's a lot of time. It can be published in 2, 3, 4. It can take forever to be published and to find the right journal. But one of the first things to think about is publications, and make it as a priority on the first and second years of your doctoral research.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. I have a lot of questions to ask, and there are more questions, but I want to go to Hussein and have him probably field some questions. And I think if it's possible, Hussein, just to see what's the sentiment in terms of question, maybe you could just like rephrase all and maybe instead of one by one, so we can tackle a lot. If you could probably, what are some of the issues or questions that are being raised?
Yeah, for example, here Selma Maruf stated, thank you very much for this interesting webinar. I have a question concerning the literature review. How much time have you spent on the review of literature? This is my second year of PhD. I still cannot finalize this chapter. Thank you.
Are there more questions? Can we field more questions, and we can bring all these questions in? One deals with lit review. That one would assume would be different for each of the panelists on the topic. A lot of things. So, but what are some of the other questions?
Good. Tawfiq Khutbi asked, if you were to rank the most difficult stage you had to go through while conducting research, what would it be? Writing the proposal, find the literature review, or organizing the literature or methodology? So what did you do to overcome that challenge?
All right, let's get another third question. I think a lot of panelists are writing them down. Then we could probably have a conversation if we can have one more.
Yeah, Nora Al-Ghazwani or Ghazwana, thank you for this very informative webinar. My question is about topic selection. Are interest and passion to know more about certain phenomena enough to make it serve as a research subject of a doctoral thesis? Thank you very much.
That's great. So maybe I will start with you, Saad, if you have any responses to any of this question. Let's just sort of take all of them, because I know we have only like sort of brief time together, and we'll come back to more questions. Go ahead, Saad.
What was the first question? So she's in her second year already. I think literature review takes. I think literature review takes from 1 year to 3 years. And I mean, this idea comes to students, to doctoral students, that they are still behind. It's normal to think like that. I mean, if you are in your third year and you're about to finish the literature review, and that's pretty normal. I mean, don't panic. That's the way it should roll. And something else, do not try to perfection the literature review. And remember, the only person in the world, at least, someone that I know, whose PhD has been published and people read, is Michel Foucault, L'Histoire de la Folie, the history of madness. So don't try to do something that is more than you can afford. I mean, don't try to perfection the literature review. And like someone said from America, an American professor said to me once, a doctorate is like an internship. C'est comme un stage, she said, like this. So you're not supposed to perfectionist. Real research starts right after the PhD. I mean, when you are a doctor, only then will you be supposed to write good quality articles. And I'd like to go back to this point.
We're going to come to the post. We'll come to that.
Yeah.
Segment, I'll ask you questions about that.
But I think she's in the right track. She's not behind. Second year, I think she is supposed to have written something like 40 pages. If 40 pages around that, I think that's normal.
Thank you so much, Yassine, for that. The floor is open. I mean, please feel free to jump in. Go ahead, Yasmin.
Okay, very quickly, the literature review, I'm just gonna share my experience. So the first year was all about reading. I read. So, reading books, a lot of books. I bought a lot of books. I invested, like I just told you, like I just took that loan and I started, investing on my PhD on that. And then the second year, it was all of it, the field work. When I say field work, the interviews, because it's very important. It is a part of literature review. When you go to meet with people, they will give you more review of literature. So it's very important. The second year, then I did the literature review and I started writing 2 pages a day. Sometimes I cut off. So the first year reading, but you have to be very specific. Don't dig, because if you dig, then you're gonna be all over. You're gonna be vague. So you have to be very specific. And thank you, Professor Karat, for that very important advice. just read about your specific subject, and then that's it. But don't I think don't go beyond 1 year of reading. And also another important piece of advice, meet people and build your network from the first year.
Absolutely. Those are great. Those are really great suggestions. Um, I mean, feel free to jump in. Otherwise, we'll take more questions if you'd like us to have more questions, probably. Go ahead, Eunice, and then Hussein maybe come up with more questions.
Yeah, there was an intriguing question about passion. Is it enough to make a topic a PhD topic? Absolutely. I believe so. On the condition that the context in which you're doing your PhD is conducive to finding the right resources, because it's not going to serve you any good to do a PhD on coral reefs if you live in the desert. That's just not going to work out for you. So that's the short answer for that one.
I love
the
that.
other thing I may have to disagree with what some of my colleagues here said about not trying to have a perfect literature review, or just the different pieces of your dissertation. I think that's a double-edged sword. I think the idea is to try to make it as perfect as you possibly can, but in the back of your mind, you should also be at peace with the fact that there's always going to be someone and some other topic that's better than yours. But that's just, I guess, the reality of life. But you should shoot for the stars, definitely, and you should shoot for a publishable, a translatable sort of dissertation. Personally, it literally took me, and I was working on the lit review together with another colleague of mine who was working on his. The writing of the chapter of the literature review took exactly 17 days. So for me, it's quite surprising when I hear 2 years, 3 years. Maybe that includes all the pre-reading and all the different reflections and all of that. But the actual writing of the chapter should not go beyond a month at best. But that's just what I think.
And I think what you're seeing, just to build on that a bit, to come in, I think what you're talking about is the writing process, not counting the reading and note taking and all the stuff, which make totally sense. You have all that you've built for a number, whatever be how many months of your reading that Yasmin talked about earlier, with all your notes, and you're coming to the sort of review, synthesizing and writing it. That's a good point. So I would probably ask Hussein to get us to more questions. I promise you I'll come to the other three panelists to answer these questions as well. I'll come to Yassine, Yasmin, and Suhaila, but go ahead, Hussein. Are there any questions there?
Another question by Hisham asked, what challenges did you find in publishing your first article, and what strategies did you use in order to overcome them? Thank you so much for this interesting webinar.
All right, give us another couple of questions, and then we'll come to probably take them as a three if there are more there.
Yes. Aziz Mummu, despair and writer's block. What did you do to rebuild your passion for the topic?
Okay, so we'll take probably two. Suhaila, would you like to take probably any of those, and we go to Yasmin, and I think Saad has his hands up. I'll come to him as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So at time of despair, just try to do something else, which means that, for example, if you are reading the literature, and we cannot do, each task by itself. So try, for example, if you cannot write, you can proofread. If you cannot, for example, collect data, you can again refine a chapter. If you cannot read, maybe you can collect the data. So try to diversify, and always try to take a break from research. Always try to take a break, and also try to have some time for yourself. And this is something I was wrong in not doing, because at the very beginning I thought that anything I do is a waste of time and I should be doing my research instead. And this was wrong, I believe. So in time of despair, try to diversify the tasks. And if despair is still with you, try to have a break.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Suhaila. I'll come to Yasmin, then Yassine and Saad.
Yeah, so answering the question concerning passion, how to keep yourself passionate about your topic. I think it's very important to seize opportunities to get feedback on your work, either from your supervisor or from other venues as well, like participating in international conferences, webinars, seminars as well. So those, they give you perspective, they give you new ideas, especially when you discuss your topic with the other researchers and you get some positive feedback, that gets you like motivated and passionate. So you feel like, yes, I can write again, I can continue this. So yeah, so this is it. So the point is the focus shouldn't be only on writing.
Thank you so much. I'll come to you, Yassine, please.
I think one piece of advice that I've heard somewhere was when you're in the process of writing, stop the moment you still have a lot to say, so that when you come back to the computer or onto the piece of paper, you can continue because you had something you stopped. But like when you write until you get blocked, it's very difficult. Like that moment when you're blocked and then you want to come back, it's like you're blocked, like that's it, it's done. So you need to go and do something else to get like some sort of new energy. But it's some sort of like when you are on your desk writing, I think it's like when you feel like it's going well and everything is fine, at some point you've got to stop somewhere there and then go process everything and then come back to it, and then you can continue, rather than stop only when you're actually blocked. The other thing that I want to say is like in terms of like publishing, and I think what Yasmin talked about in terms of conferences, I think that's very, very important. If like candidates have a possibility to participate in international conferences or national conferences, it always gives you like some sort of an edge. Like you come back and then you feel like, whoa, people are interested in what I do. People are interested in my paper. They want to hear more about it. I have to maybe publish it. I have to work more on it. So I think don't just like focus your energy on just like finishing it, but if there is a possibility to participate in international conferences, just do it, because you would come back and then you feel a different person, because you see people around you maybe working on the same thing, maybe doing similar things in different countries, and then like, okay, I want to do more than that, I want to go on with my research, and then you have that drive and it goes on and on and on.
Absolutely, and it builds that passion. It comes back to what Yasmin mentioned earlier. You're building your network. The fact that you travel, the fact you're like in participating in conferences, you're part of webinars, you're part of also listservs, and that's absolutely an important point. Saad, you have the last word before we switch the conversation.
Right, thank you. I comment on publishing. You know, prior to defending my doctorate back in 2019, I had published 4 articles in Scopus and Web of Science, which was good news. I mean, 2018, except for the passing of my father, was the best academically speaking. Now, I think that there is nothing more disheartening than receiving an email that reads, "We apologize for not being able to publish your article." You know, this can discourage many people to even try to submit their article again. But there are 2 ways, I believe. One way is to try to benchmark your article against good articles that have been published, I mean, articles of good quality. And that entails reading a lot of articles. Or the second way is to try to find an Asian journal and volunteer to be an editor, proofreader, or reviewer for their articles for free. And this gives you the opportunity to have an idea about how articles are written, you know, how APA should look like, how MLA should look like, etc. So I think, yeah. And the last thing I would say is, writing or publishing is akin to riding a bicycle. Once you get the hang of it, you get the rhythm, and then you cannot pretend that you don't know how to ride a bicycle. So that's the thing with publishing. Once you publish the first article, everything you write after that will be publishable. You know why? Because now you have the rhythm, you have the hands, you have the fingers, you have the pen that writes something akin to what is supposed to be published. So two ways: either benchmarking against two articles of good quality, or volunteering with journals. Because journals need people to proofread and review and edit. If you do that for a few articles, I think they can have an idea about how to publish articles and how articles should look like. Yeah, that's it.
All right, that's great. So I will probably switch the conversation a bit. And I want to talk about the couple of things. I want to look at one that deals with resources, and I want to look at one that deals with post-PhD and plans. And we can also go to the question. So one of the things, maybe it's a little bit institutional, and I really ask this question genuinely because a lot of you mentioned it earlier. And I don't know if there are any policymakers that are following this and listening, because Yasmin actually talked about funding earlier and saying, well, you know what, PhD students need funding. They need money to help them with conferences, with resources, with a lot of things. They can't just go and take a loan and have a financial burden, which makes total sense. But I want to ask you one question generally, and for the people who are all following us, what if there's one thing, and I'll come up with Saada right now, that you really want to see institutionally implemented, and I say institutionally implemented in that department you are a university, what would it be that you really, like, you're thinking now? Remember, you're all doctors, you finished your journey, but you are service-workly thinking about it, and you're saying, okay, there's one thing that would have helped me a lot. Beside the fact we talk about funding, what would be resources that you've really struggled because you have to look externally for that assistant that you could not get internally? And this becomes more like serve institution, not a specific person. So I'm gonna try with Saad, but I want to hear from everybody, but please briefly, because I want to move to your plans now and future plans and talk about that. Go ahead, Saad.
I think the one thing that comes to my mind is, a digital library. I mean, unless we have one, we resort to tortuous ways that include digital piracy. We don't want to be engaged in digital piracy because it beats the purpose of academia first, and it goes against the principles upon which this whole thing is built. So we need libraries, digital libraries. We need to be able to search for an article and find it and read it. Otherwise, we're stuck. We're begging for people who have access to find an article for us. Sometimes we can't read the article. Sometimes we pretend we have read the article, just from having a look at the abstract. University is, it requires a lot of effort from these doctoral students. It requires good quality work. But in exchange, there is no platform, on which we can go and, benefit. So one thing that comes to my mind is a digital library. That's what we need.
Great. That's great. That's fair. So to have a library and have digital, where you have a lot of digital journals and all that, that's fair. Yasmin.
Yeah, very quickly, two things. The first one is, first of all, one of the things, yes, it's a lack of funding. We cannot now, do a PhD if we just, I think that the quality of PhD cannot be complete if we don't actually try to navigate and meet with people and try to go to these, conferences. So I think that funding is a must and a must and a must. We have to give, the option or that opportunity to the doctoral students to be able to have those funds. The second thing is, and I said it during my PhD defense, one of the questions that I was asked is that what is the message you would like to convey after you're doing your PhD? So my message is, I'm first of all grateful to the university where I did my PhD. Grateful because I did a PhD, let's face it, in international relations in a department of culture, social studies. If it was not really thanks to my supervisor that he accepted to do my, and the endorsement of the professors of that department, I would have never done that PhD in that particular subject at the University of Letters. I think that in Morocco, the Ministry of Higher Education needs to be open in opening departments in, why not, international relations, sub-Saharan studies in English. I think that that will help a lot the students to be more open,
School of government.
Yeah, the government, I think it's very important. We don't give priority, or we don't give a lot of importance to English, but English is very important to, in like when you specialize in those areas in English. So I think this is one of the things that, I believe that Morocco highly needs to think about, to be open and, to have the students have, those students who master English, they can have the opportunity to be specialized in, in particular subjects. So I'm very grateful to the university, Mohammed V University, that accepted my abstract in that very particular subject.
That's absolutely fascinating. Thank you for both actually suggestion. Yassine.
I think one word, statisticians. It was my Achilles heel during the last stages of my work, data analysis, and I needed people to go to help with statistics. And I couldn't find people, at least that combined statistics and like human social studies. So I think that's one area where a lot of PhD candidates would benefit from. Sort of, I know, like maybe like in the Faculty of Sciences, they have statistics, and so if they could kind of like bridge that gap and help students to have someone to bring clarity to data analysis and how to use to proceed with the analysis of data. So that's one thing.
Thank you. Yasmin. Yasmin, you're mute.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Right. So for me, I think it's very important for a PhD to write their thesis while having some courses in research methodology in parallel. I mean, so sometimes you find yourself like stuck. You don't know how to deal with some data. You don't know how to analyze, and you feel you need some support. You need someone to guide you. So I think that's very important as well, so that you don't feel like you are alone. It's like you are like just dealing with your thesis alone without any support.
So this should be like sort of a support system. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It helps you through that. Suhaila and then Yunus. Saad, is that a legacy hand? Saad, is that a legacy hand? The hand you had before?
Sorry, I haven't lowered the hand.
Oh, no problem, no problem. But
I have a long hand.
I could come to you as well. Go Suhaila, then Yunus.
Yeah, in my case, I think that the thing that I want to be implemented in the universities is that the laboratory should be active. I mean, in our cases, we used to meet regularly with the supervisor, with our supervisor, but I knew cases in which people or students couldn't join their or find their supervisors easily, or they had to, for example, look on the timetable to join their supervisors. They didn't have like regular meetings. So I wish that the laboratories were really more active, and people are, or doctoral students or candidates are or have the opportunity to come together to discuss together the pending issues, the obstacles, the challenges, even when students do not work on the same topic or in the same field. I believe within the university is very important.
I'm so sorry. Suhaila, did you finish or you're?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thank you. Yunus, you have the sort of the last word in this section. Please go ahead. You're mute.
Sorry about that.
No problem at all.
Well, I don't have anything additional to what my colleagues have already said, but I would stress the importance of funding, but also technical support, because Professor Qarat did a lot of things on her own single-handedly to provide at least the students that she was responsible for with the most adequate training on SPSS and research methodologies, data analysis, data collection in general, but that needs to be coming down from the institution as an institutional process that is national, not based on people's good faith.
That was fabulous. So I think we have probably about 15 minutes left. So one thing I'm thinking about, I want to sort of like shift the conversation. You have your PhDs, congratulations, amazing accomplishment. Let's think now on. And this is something I want to sort of have in this conversation. And one of the things I'm really thinking about, and I think of like a couple of sort of questions. Currently, what are some of the things you're working on? And what are some of the future plans? And I ask that just to hear from each panelist here to tell us something you're working on. Maybe some of you are in the process of, turning your dissertation into a book, but I would also want people who are actually listening to see some of the current work you're working on. I'm going to put you in the spot, Saad. You had the legacy handbook. I'll come back to you. I'll start with you. What are some of the things you're working on now? Or probably what are some of the projects you're involved in, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's pretty much everything related to academia and publishing. I'm working on a few articles that I need to publish within this year. But again, defending a doctorate doesn't mean you have reached your success. It's only the beginning. And if it's not the beginning, it's the end of your career. So that's how I see it.
Absolutely.
And
you may do that for the rest of your life. Not only that, you're still probably going to follow success. It's something that you chase for the rest of your life.
True. And, guess what? I think that, like they say, talk is cheap. But again, I'd like you to ask me in 2 years, hey, Saad, what are you doing now? Now I am an AFL lecturer at Al Akhawayn University. But guess what? This is not what I want for the rest of my life. You see, I need to ascertain. Pardon?
What would you like to be? This is a genuine question. Like could you talk about it a bit?
Well, I'd like to be the best I can be. And so far, I'm not even halfway through. That's how I see it. I'm not content. I'm never content with what I am or where I am or what I have reached. And so, I'd like to move maybe to a public university, become associate and then full professor, and then maybe show the real way of supervising students. And I hope I can be a good supervisor to my students in the future, because the way we've lived it, I mean, from my colleagues now, from my the doctors now, they have very good impressions and good memories of Dr. Khirat, which is something impressive and something that I love to hear. But not everyone is Dr. Khirat. I've suffered. I don't want my future students to suffer. I'd like to offer help. I'd like to be the best supervisor they've ever had. And so, I'd like you to ask me in 2 years maybe, hey, Saad, are you still occupying that position, or have you promoted to something better?
Global Bus will do something in 2 to 3 years, and we'll have a conversation. We'll come back. And
Inshallah.
you'll be one of that would be one of the first questions I would probably ask you.
Sure, and I hope
that would be
will
great.
change
But
by then.
thank you so much for sharing your really personal
Thank you, Mr.
story.
Thomas.
And I do also like really sympathize. I do not want to ask you specifically what are the major obstacle you've had as far as supervision is concerned, but that's a note really well taken by all of us. Yassine.
Well, actually,
Just plans in general. I really, when I put this, I'm just asking people like certain things they're involved in, or they plan to be involved in. It's more like really sort of generic to know a little bit about your work.
Absolutely. So we're working on Professor Qairat and I were working on some articles, and just before I came in, I had to I was recording a piece for a conference. Because of the pandemic, we can no longer actually travel abroad. So we had a conference that was planned for Netherlands and Australia, but we could no longer actually do it. So we're doing it online. So just before I came in, I sent them the recording, and then that's pretty much it. I mean, for the time being, just yeah, thank you very much. So we're trying to sift through the dissertation and pretty much look for the things that are publishable, and that's the main thing for the time being. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yasmin Hasnawi.
Okay.
What are some of the big plans you have? Tell us. or things you're working on currently.
Well, actually, first of all, I'm very grateful to the university. I'm very grateful to my supervisor. I'm very grateful to, what Professor Qairat provided us, because provided me and provided to, doctoral students she had, because I think I learned a lot. And I think without the university and without institutionalizing that knowledge, I would have never been in given that opportunity that I got after getting my PhD. So after getting my PhD, I was, that I work in a very, hot topic, most solicited topics, so I'm kind of very active, trying to take part of think tanks. I'm solicited by some think tanks. I'm solicited by the media to talk about topics, but I would never have talked about these topics if I didn't do that PhD, and if I didn't take that loan, if I didn't go and meet with those people, and if I didn't actually build that network. One of the projects is that I will go into that passion, because that topic or this, the international relations is my passion, and the PhD opened that door to me. One of the projects I'm working on now, I'm working on publishing my first ever book through my PhD with the Taylor and Francis publishing company in UK. So I got the okay, they accepted the abstract, they're happy. So I'm working on it. It might take, a few months to finish it. So, and then, I'm just would like to go on in that, academic world that I love so much. I would like to be maybe in the future or in the near future, be part of an institution, to be a professor, an associate professor, because I cannot just cope my current job, which is at the administration, and cope with the academia. So it's better to be fully immersed into academia in order to give. And I think that I can give both to the academia, both to my country, and also be part of these, global leaders that work on those topics to make the world a better place to live. So I'm very
fascinating. That's fascinating. Congrats on your book contract.
And I would say that I am proud to be that product of the Moroccan university. It's true that there are a lot of challenges, but we have to also be mindful and to be grateful to what the Moroccan university gave us as persons and as students, because in the pathway, you might meet people who inspired you, like Professor Qirat, like my supervisor. So I think that one has to be very, has to recognize the efforts and the love and the inspiration that these people give you to follow suit your dream.
Thank you so much for saying that. I'm just going to link that to what Yassine mentioned earlier. You may get one person individual that gives you all this sort of support, and it's not institutional. And come back, it should be more institutional. That one person that Yassine mentioned, and mentioned his supervisor, Professor Qirat, pretty much given a lot of support in every single step with single stage. But also gave me, Yasmin, to what you mentioned earlier, the plea that you had was, what if we have like a school of governance? Maybe you'd be a person that would be teaching in that specific school or international studies or things like that. Thank you for that. Eunice, future plans, current plans, stuff you're working on.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Well, academically, to be honest, not very much has happened since the PhD, except trying to keep up with the little bit of reading every now and then. But professionally, I've made quite a move. So I'm moving from Rabat to a completely different region, taking on a whole new job with whole new responsibilities. So that'll be a whole family move right after Ramadan, inshallah. So that's coming up. But yeah, thank you very much.
Yasmin, and then I believe Suhaila.
Right. So as for me, I just defended my PhD 2 months ago. So my objective now is to join the university as professor, and the other projects are mainly have to do with publishing with getting my PhD published, like in the form of a book or in the form of articles. So that's those are my objectives for the time being.
Excellent. And you have the last word, Suhaila. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So my current plans include fulfilling my duties as an assistant university professor, and this includes supervising students, preparing or designing the syllabus and the courses. And as I mentioned before, for future plans, inshallah, I still have plenty of data which I couldn't squeeze into the dissertation. So this data is for publication, and also participation in conferences. I also have just recorded participation in a conference. And I think Yassine is talking about was talking about the same conference I sent my video too. So more or less, this is all. So my plans is to fulfill my duties the way I learned while I was a doctoral student, and the way I saw my model professors do it, and also be active in research and in academia. That's all.
This is fabulous. What a great conversation. Well, a couple of things we're going to do. One, I'm going to pose a question right now, and I want to think about it. And it may take one or two questions, and I'll be done. If there's one single advice, and I specifically, most of my questions only one single advice, and I want us to do some deep sort of like soul searching that you would give to people, and I mean really PhD candidate. And I don't want it to be advice in terms of like, hey, make sure that your late review is written this amount of time, but a really guiding advice that was given to you by someone, or an advice you actually lived through it, because this is the most important part coming again. It's like having there's nothing better than personal experience, something you've actually gone through yourself, which is more important. I want you to think of that for a minute, because I want to be one of the sort of a last word, which would be also you conclude the remarks. You can probably have the advice where conclude the remarks that you would give. But I'm gonna come to Hussein one last more time before I go to that segment. And I want him to see if there are any specific questions. But Hussein, questions that are more, not specifically looking at the writing process and later review, but do you see any really serve the questions there that you want to ask, and you may probably lump all of them or try to phrase them and ask our panelists before we move to the final segment. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there are two major questions, but I'm not sure of the internet quality that I have got. Yes, I can hear you. Do you hear me, Jonas? Because
Yes.
I feel tonight
Yes.
playing hide and
I'm sure I'm not like as
with my internet
multitasking like you with
connection.
Facebook and
Can you
all that.
hear
I'm
me?
just here. So yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So Ali Biku, his question is, what if you have spent quite some time and you have embarked on dwelling or figuring out a topic, and ultimately it turns out to be something which has been already worked on somewhere else ahead of you, or you find it hard to test the hypothesis regarding the complexity of the topic at hand? This is the
All right,
first question.
can you ask more questions? Can you ask a couple more?
Yeah, Hassan, another question by Hassan Ayat Nasser. Should reading and writing go hand in hand while doing the literature review, or writing comes only after reading enough sum of resources?
Give us one more.
Another one. Okay, let me see.
Or we can just bring these two questions here. So when you can, would anybody like to take the floor? So one is with the sort of reading and writing process, whether they should go hand in hand, or should the reading be done and then followed up by the writing? And I ask the panelists, and I'm going to put my opinion on that, but I want to ask you to see, like, sort of what really worked for you, and what you've done, it may be different than others, and what sort of strategies that worked for you better. And the second question, if I remember correctly, was, so the lit review one, and there is another one, I don't quite recall the first one.
It was about can you hear me? It was about like whether like your work on your
the topic, yeah,
exactly,
the topic, if you like
and
the
then you
topic
found out
that had, yeah, that someone else like did all the research. And thank you so much, Yasin. Like you've pertinently, I just lost that. So so Yasin, should I start with you then?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Like, go ahead.
I think with the question about the topic, it would be a far-fetched case to encounter the exact same like approach to the topic. I mean, like, if yes, there is a topic, but like you probably bring in your own perspective, you bring in your own personal experiences and a different approach, and that's more or less an added value to the topic itself than actually a limitation. So I think that would be a good thing, unless it's copy and paste, then that's a different story. The one about reading and writing, I think when we like automatically when you read, you do the writing. I mean, like, it's not like you don't do the actual writing of a dissertation, but I mean, like, you don't pick up a book and just read and put it down. I mean, like, you do read and then you highlight, you take notes, and then you put down a few things of reflections about that, whatever it is that you've read, and then that's a process of writing, and that takes you, of course, to like the final stages of writing your like the whole dissertation. But I think if like, let's say, for example, assume that it's the literature review. I mean, at some point you will have like as you read, you probably need to put down and jot down a few things, impressions first, and then a few, like the first draft, because I mean, how is it going to work? I mean, like, if you just like piling up reading books and then like you leave the writing process until like what, you finish like 20 books, 30 books. I mean, how are you going to handle, the whole? So I think it would work simultaneously as you go, as a first draft, and then you come back to it and then proofread, sharpen it a little bit more, and then you go.
Thank you so much. Yes, me.
Very quickly, one of the tips, I'm gonna go with the second question. One of the tips that I did, and it worked for me very well is that when I not finalized, like pre-finalized the table of contents, I just, when I read, I read, for example, a book, and that book I found a chapter that goes in line with chapter 2 in my table of contents, so I just keep writing. So you have to be organized, and you have to follow the table of content, and you have to read and write simultaneously. So with the table of content, I think you have to pre-finalize it ASAP. It doesn't matter that it has to be finalized, but at least you have an idea. So when you have an idea, then that will help you read and write while taking notes of following what the table of content is, do. Then, for example, you can write in chapter 3 and then find something in chapter 4 interesting in a read, and then you can go to chapter 4 and put whatever you read, put it in chapter 4, of course, with your own idea. That helped me a lot in my writing and reading, starting from the second year of my PhD.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I probably, if there are no, Saad, is that a legacy hand, or you want?
Yeah. No. I'm raising my hand.
Go ahead.
Yes. Regarding the first question, should we read and write? Does reading and writing go hand in hand, or do you read and then at the end write? I mean, when you write, you don't want to engage in plagiarism, and so when you read and write, first you remember the reference, you paraphrase if there is any paraphrasing, you place between quotes if there is any quote, and then you know the page in the book depending on the style, APA, Malay, Harvard, etc. So reading and writing do go hand in hand because they're practical. And I've noticed, talking with many people about plagiarism, I've noticed that people don't know what plagiarism is. Many people come to me saying, hey, look at the plagiarism similarity report. It says 50% in these 50 pages, but I have the references. I say, no, that's not the point of plagiarism. Plagiarism is not about references. I mean, if you quote everything that someone has written, and then you mention their name and date, that does not mean that you're doing something that is legitimate. And many people, are confused when it comes as to what plagiarism is. So people need to research what this is. And the second topic is when someone realizes that they have done something that is similar to another thesis, I think it depends on how clever they are in changing certain variables so that it's a slightly different. Yeah, I mean, they don't have to do the whole thing again and over. I mean, maybe just changing certain variables, title, and adding another perspective to it would suffice. So yeah.
All right, thank you so much. Last segment, I know we have about 3 minutes, but I'll say we'll have about probably 5 minutes, is to ask each person for a concluding statement and one piece of advice. And again, one piece of, and I really want you to have one piece of advice that's going to stuck with someone throughout all what you've done, all this work. Think of one specific one you want to leave someone with. Be as creative as you can. We'll try probably to generate 6 pieces of advice here. So I'm going to start with Yunus, and I'll go to Yasmin, Saad, and Suhaila. I'll give you the last word, Saad. So a piece of advice. And again, you're addressing it to PhD candidates. You're addressing it to people that are thinking about probably to embark or to start as well their future studies.
Okay. Well, this may be the last time I speak in this forum, so I wanted to thank everybody that's involved, including participants, Professor Qiraat, the moderators, and my fellow colleagues. A piece of advice is really from my experience, a PhD journey is probably one in a lifetime opportunity to take one thing and one thing only and study it uniquely and deeply and extensively and intensively. So choose your topic wisely, something that will resonate with you, something that you'll dedicate your 7 years or 6 years or 5 years to, but also something that's practical, something that's going to earn you some money when you finish. And that would be it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, me.
So very quickly, from my own perspective, I think I think that the PhD journey is an important transition in our life, in students' life. It can be like an unpredictable trip due to the many uncertainties involved in the long, winding journey. The uncertainties can be also doubled, and it involved both academic challenges and life transitions. But I think that the truth of the topic is important. That topic can help you become the specialist. That topic can open doors to you, and you have to be smart in choosing the topic that I believe that goes in line with whatever you want to do. That's something that can help you get the right job you would like to. And also, one of the best pieces of advice I get, I'm going to repeat it again, during your PhD journey, focus on your specialty, focus only on the readings that will help you finish your PhD and that will bring the best results, or the results that in the academic life.
Thank you
That's
so
all
much,
what I have.
Yasmin. Yassine.
Well, thank you very much for bringing us all together. I think one thing that I would say is this. I mean, a PhD journey is challenging, it's daunting, it's energy draining. One piece of advice that I would like to leave the audience with is make time for leisure and self-care, because you will need it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Yasmin.
So thank you so much for such opportunity. I can say that PhD is meaningful, difficult, but it is really worth it. I mean, and one piece of advice that I can mention is support is very important. It means a lot to be surrounded by people who encourage you, people who believe in you, because this gives you a push to continue, because sometimes you will feel like this cannot finish. I think that's important. I mean, support. So especially when it comes from someone who is going through the same experience. So yeah, so this is it. That's my piece of advice.
Thank you so much. Suhaila.
Yeah, it's been a great pleasure to join you all tonight. My piece of advice to the doctoral students is that first, I would like to say that the doctoral research is an ongoing learning process. And my piece of advice is that in times of crisis, do not keep it to yourself. It's torturing. Try to share it. Best case scenario, you should resort to your supervisor. But if in anyhow it's not possible, or for you, or I don't know the specific cases of everyone, but try to share it with the others, with your colleagues, maybe other professors, maybe even people who have nothing to do with your specialty or with the doctoral thesis or with the university. Try to share it, try to let it out. You never know where the solution might come from. Thank you very much again.
Thank you so much for that. And Saad, you have the last word. Go ahead, grand finale. Saad.
Last word, it's ironic. It's like the last, is it last dinner? Last dinner? What is it called?
Last supper.
Last supper. Yeah, because it's funny because hearing my friends now talk about their supervisor, and especially Dr. Khairat, in a good and positive way, it made me come off as Judas. I sounded very resentful towards some people, but I really want to end this on a good note. I want to say thank you for my professors, who have contributed to making the person I am today. Thanks to my university, and thank you for this opportunity. I didn't think it would be this interesting. It's very interesting. And regarding a piece of advice that I would give to people, who are embarking on this voyage, I would say, please be patient, and you have to have resolve and patience, because there is nothing better than people calling you doctor. It's something that is earned, that makes you proud. And I keep thinking to myself, I'm really happy that I did the right thing, that I never quit. When many ideas came to my mind about quitting, about letting go, but I never did. And today I thank God that I didn't quit. So if you don't want to quit, you have to have patience. Especially in Morocco, there will be more hurdles and challenges that will come in your way to reaching and achieving your goal. So be patient, and you have to have resolve. And I think everything will be okay. I mean, you will succeed. If you visualize yourself in front of the jury defending your thesis, you have to visualize yourself. If you don't do it, then you're going into the unknown. You have to see yourself doing that. You have to shed tears of happiness. And at least that's how I did it. And that's how I do it usually. So patience and resolve.
Congratulations once again.
Thank you very much for this opportunity again.
So I'm gonna just probably a couple of points, and I'll go probably to the Global Bus Foundation, Hussein. It's been really a pleasure. It's been a fabulous conversation. I've learned a lot from this conversation. I've learned a lot about you and your project, and I look forward to actually meeting you in person. This is really fabulous, and I just want to thank you personally for being a part of this. But I also want to thank Hussein as well, approaching me and saying, would you please come and moderate? He said, I'm super busy, but I'll make it. But it's been a fabulous 2 hours to share and to hear about your experience, but also to have you talk to a bunch of PhD candidates that probably right now have been inspired by your own words and your own wisdom and pieces of advice as well. I also want to thank Professor Qairat for really initiating this series actually, and involving everybody here. I just want to say that. So Hussein, the floor is yours. Thanks for the invitation. And you can probably say some concluding remarks.
So on behalf of Global Bus Foundation, I would like to thank everyone here. It's a very inspiring, webinar tonight. And I'm sure that a lot of, journey or previous experiences. I would like also to thank Jonas and Busi. It's not easy to work the whole day and to have a rest for 30 minutes and then to moderate with us tonight's webinar. Unless you have got passion to empower, future doctors, okay? And it's our pleasure to welcome you every time. I also would like to thank a lot Professor Yamin Al-Khairat Al-Allam. I guess she is an inspiring figure, and I'm sure a lot of good stories have been told, okay, about her great teachers tonight were under her supervision, and they express their great, gratitude and appreciation. Yes, I would like to end up tonight's session with Professor Yasmin Al-Khairat. Anything to add or to say? Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that's what shall I say? I'm really impressed. And as Yasmina Hasnawi has said it, this is an evidence that the Moroccan system is actually not that bad. If it has been if we have been able to produce such figures, because I consider these people here today, that's exceptional people, and I am sure that those who are following us can achieve as much as these people here, and this is one of the objectives through this session. I just want to get to Saad. Saad referred to the actually challenges and the frustrations he has gone through during his dissertation completion. And I would like just to tell the same story I have gone through. And this is actually when I heard him saying he wants to be the best supervisor. I think that this is actually a good thing, because you cannot imagine the challenges I went through myself as a doctoral student. I was even already a teacher at the university for my Doctorat National. It's higher than a doctorate, it's more. And that, what I suffered from with my doctoral supervisor made me actually decide never to make my students suffer from what I suffered from. And this is actually what I have tried to do throughout my career as a supervisor, and I hope I have managed. I have been tough on many of them, yes, Yunus can say it. When I see that they are not going at the pace I want them to be, they are not doing the quality of work I want them to do, but that's for their own benefit. It's not really when your supervisor is tough on you, it's not because he or she doesn't like you, but because he or she wants the best for you. So I think that Saad will be a very good supervisor, because when you go through something, and if you are really a good person, you want to spare the others what you have gone through, and you become a better person. And this is my message with this. And I would like to thank Global Bus Foundation for this opportunity you are really offering us. I would like to thank Jonas, my friend Jonas. He has done an excellent job moderating this session. I've been impressed really by the quality of moderation, and I'm also impressed by the testimonies we have all heard from our participants. And this is to be continued. Yes, there is still another session to come.
Yeah.
And this time we will be involving doctoral students who are still in the process of completing their dissertation. And we want to have actually students from different Moroccan universities. And I'm also involving a doctoral student at the international level to talk to us about, for instance, undertaking a doctoral research at an American university, just for Moroccan students to see how challenging actually it is to undertake and to complete a dissertation in other universities, because the process in Morocco is really simpler compared to what is happening in other universities. So with this again, I thank Jonas really a lot for his time. He spent the whole day teaching, and I kept asking about him because he did not interact with me throughout the day. So I got some dark ideas, thinking, is he okay? I hope he will be there on time. So thank you very much, Jonas, for being with us. You are really an added value to this, to our program. And I'm just impressed by all what these young people have done. And I think that a brilliant career is awaiting for all of them. And I really foresee good things for them. And I hope we'll all keep in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Our pleasure. So thank you, everyone. So don't forget that Global Bus Foundation every single Friday at 9 p.m. in Ramadan organizes the English language teaching webinar on topics related to education. So next Friday with special guest speakers, but next Friday again, we are going to continue with the third session. We are going to host PhD candidates. We are going to ask them some questions about what they are doing up to now. Thank you. See you next week. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.